Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Thursday, July 16th, 2020. This is your daily Buckeye Fix. I'm Tom Orr, and today I'm joined by James Meyerhoffer-Kubalik. He's a contributor for Buckeye Scoop. His first piece was a really interesting data-driven look at the college football playoff selection process. James, first of all, welcome to the Morning Scoop, and can you just let people know a little bit about how you got interested in doing data analysis like this?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me to the Scoop. Hopefully I can provide scoop dreams. I uh, I have a background in accounting, undergraduate in accounting from the University of Nebraska. Don't hold that against me. But I got my master's in economics and data analysis, and so there were a lot of options of things I could do. Evaluate cities and whatnot, and urban expansion. But I chose to use what kind of those skill sets on more college football because I found it a little bit more interesting. So that's kind of where I converged my passion and data analytics, and that's kind of what I do now. My day job, I do a lot of modeling, weather modeling, all sorts of marketing, attribution modeling for a company in Lawrence, Kansas.
I guess I think people probably understand that college football might be a more fun way to apply some of those skills than some of your other options.
I
Your
agree.
first piece, as we said, focused on the college football playoff selection process. That's something that I know Ohio State fans have possibly taken issue with at points in the past. What kinds of factors did you look at to see how, what individual variables impacted the final playoff field?
Sure. So I actually started out this just kind of not trying to be influenced at all by the college football playoff committee. I knew I was going to run into the things they have listed, but I was just kind of evaluating everything I could, anything about a particular matchup, how they did, point differentials, defensive efficiency, offensive efficiency throughout the season, strength of schedules, you name it. Really anything that I could get my hands on, I tried to evaluate, all the way to things that weren't directly related, but also to see if it influenced it, like recruiting budgets, coaches' salaries, just things on down the line to see if that would add any predictability to my models. So I had about 50 different variables that I collected over the course of the 6 years that there has been the college football playoff.
So which of those 50 had the biggest impacts, either positive or negative on a team's chances of making the playoff? And was there anything that really surprised you one way or the other that it really did make a huge difference or it didn't?
So the biggest one that had the positive impact was, and this is going to be a no-brainer to everybody out there listening, it was the conference championship win. I know you're going to think back to 2017 Alabama and think, hey, if that's the case, why did they get in? Even in the article, July 2nd, we kind of compared Ohio State and Alabama. But that was the top indicator, followed by your average point differential. So you always hear the pundits saying, like, how well did they beat teams on average? Additionally, was the largest loss differential. They talked about, like, evaluating the floor. I know Kirby Honeycutt, I think I said his name right, from Texas Tech, talked about that a lot. When I'm sorry about the heartburn my next comments bring, when he talked about either Ohio State versus Iowa or Ohio State versus Purdue. Those were big factors in letting in one team over Ohio State. And then another important one was strength of schedule rank was very important.
Now, I saw taking what you learned from about how those factors weighed into those decisions. You mentioned Ohio State 2017. I think that was obviously something that our audience is probably pretty familiar with.
Yeah.
Like, were they the most egregious team getting left out, and who got in, who should have gotten left out in maybe other years as well?
Yeah. So I did this, like you said, throughout from the beginning of 2014, and majority of the time my models agreed. But in 2017 in particular, it did say that UCF should have got in, and I believe that was the year they beat Auburn in the Peach Bowl. But then Ohio State should have got in over Alabama. So those were the most recent ones. I believe in 2014 it did say TCU should have been in. I know there was that debate between Baylor and TCU, which was essentially a clone of one another that year. Thank you that Ohio State got in. But most recently in the 2020, it said that Oregon should have got in over Oklahoma. And if you look at the results, I think it was like 63-28, and it wasn't even that close. Oklahoma definitely shouldn't have been in there. So this model was kind of it's interesting because it gives you what the rankings are once you put the field back through the model. It tells you like the team that was most deserving to be in the playoffs, and it ranks them. But then it will of course tell you who should have been in and who shouldn't have been in. So it's pretty interesting.
This is obviously going to be a very different kind of year with where you're going to be throwing a lot of precedent out probably, and you're going to have
Right.
all sorts of teams playing different numbers of games potentially, and no non-conference data points to compare if everyone's just playing a conference only schedule. Does that make it easier or harder to? I mean, does the model work this year if the data sets are all kind of different from previous seasons?
Actually, that's a very good point. It probably wouldn't be that great of a model for this season, given you're not playing your non-conference. But I know the SEC doesn't. I don't even know who they play. Probably Cupcake. But yeah. So just the fact that you said this is kind of a different year, I would never turn around and use this model on this year just because of so many differences. I mean, the strength of schedule within your own conference. I mean, it would have a lot of teams in the SEC and the Big Ten on top of that. But you're right. Using the past model wouldn't necessarily make sense this year.
So just focus on the injustice of 2017 and don't worry about 2020 so far. We'll
Yeah,
as long as there's a football
absolutely.
season. Yeah.
I go back to 2017 as much as I can.
I saw you on the board a week or so back asking folks for some other topics that people were interested in maybe reading about. Do you have another project that you're working on next already?
Yeah, so I am working on another Ohio State related. My kind of goal is to work on Ohio State and college football, so I can compare the two, whether I'm comparing Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, and then the field. But I'm finishing up a piece on Ohio State's attendance model. So this would really be, what factors affect an individual consumer, and I know I talk in terms of economic terms, decision to go in to a game or not. That could be like when it rained, how many people didn't show up to a game, depending on the matchup. When Ohio State played Michigan, how many people did that bring? When the Browns play on either two-day side of Ohio State at home, does that affect things? So I looked at all sorts of different variables. I also looked in to see how finicky Ohio State fans were. Like based on the previous point differential, whether it was a win or a loss, did that impact someone's decision? Are they still hurt? So those kind of things, I try to just factor as much as I can in. But that's kind of what I'm working on now. But I also, on the board, kind of took some suggestions of some more in-game things, fourth down analysis, looking into correlations between recruiting classes and success on the field, just a bunch of different things I'm kind of working on gathering the data for, so that I can try to kind of meet the needs of the scoopers out there.
Yeah, those are some really interesting story ideas. I will cast a vote for your fourth down idea. That is a particular hobby horse of mine. Stop punting, everyone. It doesn't do you any good. So I will make sure I tweet out a link to James's story on the college football playoff when I post the podcast. So you will be able to find it on Twitter. We will also have a link to it in the post about this episode on our Ask the Insiders board and on the front page of the site. You can just go to buckeyescoop.com and find it there. And James, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time. And just a reminder, you can find all of the great podcasts from Buckeye Scoop on Apple, Google, and Spotify. Just search Buckeye Scoop to find all of our shows. You can make sure you subscribe right there and also leave us a rating and review. That really helps us out. So thank you guys for listening. Have a great day, and we will talk to you tomorrow.